Christopher Patten is a prominent conservative British politician with wide experience of the world. He was famously the last governor of Hong Kong before its handover to China in 1999. After that, he became the European Commissioner for Foreign Relations. He is also a life peer, Lord Patten, which is probably very useful in getting restaurant reservations. The Independent calls Chris Patten the best foreign secretary Britain never had. I would argue he might well be the best prime minister Britain never had. He's written a number of books. The new one is called What Next? A fascinating and very well-written dissection of world politics, economics in the age of globalization. Chris Patten, welcome.
Nice to be on your show.
Let me ask you, you look at this world and the picture you paint is one that's considerably different from the world we've been in. What do you think is the big difference between the world that, say, your mentor Margaret Thatcher was operating in and the world that the next American president will have to operate in?
Well, some of the differences are a consequence of much that's gone right. It's a rather sort of Hegelian concept. We now find ourselves dealing with the dark side of globalization and some of the difficulties which globalization has created. We've enjoyed a lot of the benefits, including the hundreds of millions of people lifted out of poverty in Asia. But we now find ourselves dealing with problems that I think can only be tackled by nation states working together, even the biggest nation states. The world I've written about is the world that the next president is going to have to lead. Lead because America remains the only global superpower. America is the only country that matters everywhere. And America has to be involved if we're going to tackle some of the major problems we face. To that extent, the world is the same as it was when Margaret Thatcher was, I almost said, on the throne.
Who would you like to see, Chris, as the next American president?
Well, like the majority of the world, I'd like to see Senator Obama. I think that those who were pretty neutral as between Obama and McCain were turned off substantially when Senator McCain, in his first really big choice, chose somebody who seemed to be reaching back into the sort of reaches of the Republican Party, which had caused so many of the problems of the last few years. So I think that put a lot of people off. Senator McCain's obviously a genuine war hero and a decent man, but I think for all those of us who believe that what's needed is change, and that part of that change in economic management is bound to involve addressing the issue of social equity in the United States. Those of us who take that view, I think, bank pretty heavily with Senator Obama.
Do you think that Senator Obama will be able to shift the dial in terms of negotiating with the Iranians, perhaps the Israeli-Palestinian peace process? Or, you know, are these problems fairly intractable? You've seen this world up close. I mean, the Iranians aren't actually, you know, waiting to negotiate with anyone. North Korea is a very difficult problem. The Israeli-Palestinian peace process is not going ahead because of severe dysfunctions on both sides. How mendable is all this?
I think it is mendable, and you start by asserting the principle that diplomacy begins by talking to people even when you don't agree with them, and that would make a nice change. You don't have to wait until people say they accept everything you say until you are actually prepared to sit down and discuss matters with them. And I think looking at the world in a sort of Manichaean good versus evil way isn't very helpful in dealing with problems which have much more grey in them sometimes than black and white. And I hope a new American president would understand that the world has changed so that there isn't really a major problem that we can tackle unless we involve China and India and Brazil and the other emerging economies. They're not superpowers, but they're powers that matter, whether you're trying to deal with Iran or trying to deal with North Korea, trying to deal with nuclear proliferation, trying to deal with terrorism, organized crime, epidemic disease. They really should demand a much bigger focus in an American president's attention. Multilateralism is not an easy option. We're going to find that the world is very difficult, and relationships between America and the rest of the world are very difficult, even when President Bush is backing Crawford and Vice President Cheney's back shooting ducks, or shooting people who shoot ducks. So I don't think the world is suddenly going to be a great deal easier.
What would be your advice to President Obama? Let us say he gets elected in the first month or two that he's in the White House.
Well, I think he's got to appoint some good people fast. But what I would above all tell him or advise him to do is to tell it like it is and to challenge people. Adlai Stevenson once said that the average man and woman are a great deal better than the average. Politicians don't usually behave as though they think that's true. I think it'd make a wonderful change to have the leader of a pluralist democracy who acted on that, who told people just how tough things are going to be, just what's going to have to be done, and maybe ran all the risks on the side of honesty rather than spinning stories and trying to win the headlines every day. That's not going to get us through this crisis, and it's not going to lay the basis for the sort of cooperation which will enable us to muddle through and manage rather more successfully than we have in the last few years.
Christopher Patten, a pleasure to talk to you. Come and see us when you're in New York.
Thanks very much indeed.